I'm Adam Miglio. I'm an associate professor of Old Testament Archaeology at Wheaton College.
Dr. Adam Miglio. Adam, good to see you. Welcome back to Exegetically Speaking.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you, so it's great to see you. Now, nobody can see you. They can hear you, though. That's the thing. But I can see you wearing a tie. You're looking good. I'm wearing the Astros paraphernalia because the Astros are in the World Series. Go Astros. Anyway, if the Cubs were in there, I'd say go Cubs, but they're not.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Hey, we're going to talk about Akkadian today, which is not exactly a biblical language, but it really affects and sort of touches on that. So how did you get started reading Akkadian? Let's start with that.
Sure. I was first exposed to Akkadian in classes with Dr. John Walton, now my colleague at Wheaton. And my eyes were opened through his research to all the potential the texts written in Akkadian had for understanding scripture. And it really set me down a trajectory I had not imagined in any way, shape, or form. And of course, after leaving Wheaton, I went to the University of Chicago, and I've been reading Akkadian texts now for nearly 20 years as a result.
University of Chicago is one of those places where Akkadian is taught on a regular basis, I guess, right?
Yes, it's really a wonderful place that is deeply committed to this language.
Yeah, very good. So for those who don't know, what is Akkadian?
Sure. Akkadian is a Semitic language. So that means it belongs to a group of languages that have been and are even currently spoken in the Middle East. So it's the oldest Semitic language, which goes back to the 3rd millennium BC and really takes off and becomes the common language spoken in the ancient Middle East at the end of the 3rd millennium, so around 2250 BC. And then really it's going to be written all the way down until the time of Jesus, believe it or not, though it's the dominant language from about, we'll say, 2000 BC to, 500 BC.
So what does it look like? If I were to look at Akkadian, how would I know that I'm looking at Akkadian?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's really important to distinguish between languages and scripts, right? In English, right, we write English, but use the Latin script. And facility with the Latin script doesn't mean facility with every language written in the Latin script. I can read English quite well. I can read French, but I certainly can't read Portuguese, all of which use the Latin script. Acadian uses cuneiform script, and cuneiform is a script that was used to write about a dozen different languages. So you have to read cuneiform script in order to understand the Akkadian language. So it's important to distinguish between those two. If you can read the cuneiform script, though, the language has a lot of similarity with biblical Hebrew. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's played such an important role in interpreting scripture in the last 175 years.
When you see it, when you see the script, what is it written on exactly?
Sure. My students like to say it looks like chicken scratch. It's all sorts of wedges and pressed into soft clay, which over time, of course, the clay is hardened. That is cuneiform. The script is simply the Latin for wedge-shaped writing.
So you talked about how it is a part of the Semitic languages. It does touch on and has some similarity to biblical Hebrew. Where are some of those connections made?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's related to biblical Hebrew in a lot of different ways. Being Semitic, it's built around 3 consonant roots for those who are listening who've had some Hebrew and are familiar with that sort of structure of the language. It's important because of these similarities linguistically for understanding biblical Hebrew, but also it's important because culturally, historically, it's being written and read throughout the Old Testament period. And so it's very likely, in fact, probably undeniable that our Israelites are aware of texts written in Akkadian and are reading these texts and at times responding to them.
So when you think about Akkadian, is there one place in the history of the Bible where it's the most prominent? Is it early on stuff? Is it mainly early on?
I wouldn't say so. No, because the language is being written before the biblical text is written, and really all the way down through the end of the Old Testament period, it sort of makes appearances throughout the text. But it's concentrated in those moments where Israel comes into contact with the major political powers of Mesopotamia, the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Of course, you can go back even further, the traditions in Genesis 11, Abraham coming from Mesopotamia as well. So I think you find various places throughout Scripture where that engagement with Akkadian literature, politics being written and recorded in Akkadian, makes its way and becomes a conversation piece with the biblical text. For example, I've already alluded to, of course, parts of Genesis, the Tower of Babel, the flood story, I think shows influences and awareness of Mesopotamian traditions. You also get it, not surprisingly, in places like the prophet Ezekiel, who is living in Babylonia and encountering this material, I think, firsthand.
Are there any particular loan words that stand out to you, words that just, you find in Akkadian that you also see in the Hebrew Bible?
Absolutely, there are some loan words. I mean, one that comes to mind, we know, of course, of flood traditions from Mesopotamia. We have this flood tradition in the Genesis text, and the word for pitch, right, what actually is used in the construction of the ark, long puzzled interpreters because it was not a known Hebrew word. Lo and behold, it's, the word for pitch is taken straight from Akkadian and the flood accounts there. It helps us understand. I think there's lots of examples where the language of Mesopotamia has made its way into the biblical world, much the way language contact works today.
Well, for those who are studying biblical languages and are really interested in the background of the Old Testament in particular, Akkadian is one of those languages that they might want to study, might want to pick it up. And you can do that at Wheaton College with Adam Miglio. Adam, thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
Thanks for having me.
If you learned too much today and your head is hurting, there's one sure cure. That is to share this podcast with a friend. We hope you've enjoyed Exegetically Speaking. If you have never visited Wheaton College, I hope you'll make plans to do so. We have a wonderful campus year around. And if biblical languages are your fancy, check out our MA and BA programs at Wheaton College, wheaton.edu. Look for modern and classical languages. That's the best place to get started. If you have comments, you have questions, you just want to be in touch, please email us at exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks for all those who make this possible. You know who you are. Until next time, thanks for listening.